They say blood is thicker than water. But nobody warns you when that blood becomes poison coursing through your veins, slowly killing everything good inside you. I used to believe that home was where the heart was. Looking back now, I realize my heart had been homeless for years, beating frantically in a chest that never felt safe, never felt valued, never felt enough. My name is Catherine, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from the people who share your DNA. The house on Maple Street in Havenwood, Ohio, looked picture-perfect from the outside. 2 stories of colonial charm with white shutters and a manicured lawn. But perfection, I learned, is often just a mask hiding something rotten underneath. The rot in our house had a name, favoritism so blatant it could choke you. I was 32 years old, a divorced single mother living in my childhood bedroom with my 8-year-old son Leo, trying to rebuild our lives after my marriage crumbled under my ex-husband's gambling addiction. My parents' offer to let us move back home had seemed like a blessing. I should have known better. My sister Chloe was 26, unmarried, unemployed, and the golden child who could do no wrong. She had carved out a career as a lifestyle influencer on Instagram with 15,000 followers. My parents treated her like a celebrity, while I worked double shifts at Mel's Diner, coming home exhausted to clean up after everyone and care for Leo. Chloe would sleep until noon, spend hours perfecting her makeup for Instagram stories, and complain about how exhausting it was to be a content creator. She had never paid rent, never bought groceries, never even washed her own dishes. Meanwhile, I worked myself to the bone while being treated like an unwelcome burden. Leo had learned early that in this house, children should be seen and not heard. He was a bright, sensitive boy who rarely spoke above a whisper downstairs, instinctively understanding that his needs would always come last. The Friday night that changed everything started like so many others. Dad was watching the Browns game. Mom was scrolling through Facebook while liking every post Chloe made. And I was cleaning up dinner while Leo played quietly with his Legos in the corner. Chloe was filming her nighttime routine in the dining room, having transformed it into her personal studio with ring lights blazing. She had spent the last hour complaining about everything, the lighting, the neighbor's dog barking, and me making too much noise washing dishes. Leo had been working on a complex Lego castle for days. When one small red brick slipped from his fingers and skittered across the floor toward Chloe's setup, he quietly got up and tiptoed toward it. As he bent down to retrieve the piece near her tripod, his shoulder barely grazed the setup, causing the ring light to wobble for perhaps 2 seconds. Chloe's reaction was immediate and volcanic. "What the hell are you doing? You little brat," she screamed. "Do you have any idea what you just did? I've been working on this for an hour." Leo scrambled backward, his eyes wide with terror. "I'm sorry, Aunt Chloe. I was just trying to get my—" "Shut up!" she shrieked. "You ruined everything. This is my workspace, not your playground." What happened next unfolded in slow motion. She grabbed a bottle of setting spray from her makeup collection, the kind containing alcohol and chemicals designed to lock makeup in place. Without hesitation, she aimed it directly at Leo's face from 3 feet away and pressed the nozzle, releasing a concentrated stream of chemical mist straight into my son's eyes. Leo's scream was unlike anything I had ever heard. He collapsed to his knees, both hands pressed against his eyes as the chemicals burned his corneas. I lunged forward, but my father blocked my path. "Hold on there, Catherine," he said calmly. "Let Chloe handle this. The boy needs to learn respect for other people's property." I tried to push past him. I said, "Let her handle it," he repeated, gripping my arm. Behind him, Leo writhed on the floor in agony. My mother finally looked up from her phone with only irritation. "Oh, for crying out loud," she said with an exaggerated sigh. "It's just a little setting spray. He's being dramatic. At least now maybe he won't smell like poverty for a few hours." The casual cruelty of that statement, delivered while my child was in obvious distress, shattered something inside me. I shoved my father's hand away and rushed to Leo, scooping him up as he sobbed. "It hurts, Mommy," he whispered. It hurts so bad. Behind us. Chloe was still ranting. Good, maybe next time he'll think twice before messing with my equipment. I carried Leo upstairs and spent 20 minutes flushing his eyes with cool water while he clung to me and shook. Downstairs. I could hear my family discussing the incident as if it were some minor household disruption rather than an assault on a child. As I held my trembling son, something fundamental shifted inside me. The fog of desperation that had clouded my judgment for months suddenly cleared. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't going to get better. My family didn't see Leo as their grandson. They saw him as an inconvenience. A reminder of my failures. That night, after Leo finally fell asleep, I made a plan. I quietly gathered our essential belongings, packing only what would fit in my backpack and a small suitcase. By 3 a.m, everything was ready. We're going on an adventure, I whispered to Leo as I woke him. We need to be very quiet. Okay? We made it downstairs and almost to the front door before a floorboard creaked. The living room light clicked on, and my father stood there in his bathrobe, looking at us with cold eyes that held no surprise. Only judgment. We stared at each other in what I knew would be our final confrontation. He didn't ask where we were going or try to stop us. I met his gaze steadily, opened the front door, and walked with deliberate steps into the pre-dawn darkness. The Greyhound station was a 30-minute walk. Cleveland was 150 miles away and cost $90 for 2 one-way tickets. I chose it because it was big enough for us to disappear into and far enough away to feel like a clean break. The first weeks in Cleveland were brutal. We stayed at a homeless shelter downtown, sharing a room with 3 other families. The conditions were crowded and chaotic. But even there, Leo was different. Away from my parents' house, he spoke in his normal voice again, laughed more freely, and seemed to shed the constant tension that had marked his behavior for months. I found work at 2 places, day shifts at Rose's Kitchen and night shifts cleaning offices downtown. After 3 weeks, we moved into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment in Tremont. It was on the 3rd floor with slanted ceilings and radiator heat that clanked all night. But it was ours. During my night shifts at the law offices, I began reading legal documents during breaks, teaching myself about family law and child advocacy. I enrolled in evening classes at Cuyahoga Community College to become a paralegal. Through Leo's school counselor, we connected with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. It was through legal aid that my grandmother found me. A letter arrived addressed to me personally, written in shaky but determined handwriting. My dear Catherine, it began. I have been looking for you and your son for months. I know you may not remember me well, but I am your grandmother, and I want you to know that you are not alone in this world. She explained that my father had systematically blocked her access to our family for years, controlling the narrative and ensuring his version of their relationship remained unchallenged. She had been quietly monitoring our situation and wanted to offer her support. We talked for 3 hours that first phone conversation, filling in years of lost time. She told me the truth about why my father had cut her out of our lives. She had confronted him about his obvious favoritism toward Chloe and threatened to petition for grandparents' rights. 6 months after that first phone call, my grandmother passed away peacefully. Her attorney informed me that I needed to attend the reading of her will. I found myself sitting in a conference room with my parents and Chloe, all gathered around a mahogany table. My father looked confident, even smug. When the attorney began reading, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. My grandmother had left her entire estate to Leo. Everything, the farm, her savings, her investments. The total value was substantial enough to ensure Leo's college education and provide genuine financial security. It was structured as a trust fund that I would manage until Leo turned 18. The silence was deafening. Then my mother exploded. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "That old witch was obviously manipulated." She lunged across the table toward me. "You conniving little bitch, you talked a dying woman into cutting out her own son." Security guards had to restrain her. Chloe immediately switched into damage control mode, posting a tearful video on Instagram about family betrayal and financial manipulation. She set up a GoFundMe campaign, and my parents hired a lawyer to contest the will. But I had been preparing. Working with legal aid attorneys. I had documented everything. Every conversation with my grandmother had been recorded with her consent. Most damaging was a recording my grandmother had made herself, a conversation with my father where his cruelty was undeniable. "So, what if I favor Chloe?" His voice was clear on the recording. "Catherine is weak. She made her own choices. At least Chloe has potential. Catherine is just ordinary." About the setting spray incident, Chloe was just teaching the boy some boundaries. A little spray in the face never killed anyone. Maybe it'll teach him not to be so clumsy. The case fell apart quickly. The judge not only upheld my grandmother's will but issued a restraining order and referred the matter to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. Local media picked up the story, exposing Chloe's past cruel social media posts and interviewing Leo's teachers about his PTSD symptoms. The final hearing was almost anticlimactic. The judge dismissed my family's lawsuit and ordered them to pay all court costs. But the real victory was watching Leo testify calmly about what had happened. His voice heard and believed by adults in positions of authority. 3 years later, I completed my paralegal certification and was hired full-time by Legal Aid, specializing in domestic violence and child advocacy. Leo flourished, joining drama club and developing into a confident young man who stood up for other kids being bullied. We moved to a small house in Shaker Heights with a backyard where Leo could practice his monologues. The house was modest but ours, purchased with money from the trust fund. I heard through acquaintances that my parents lost their house to foreclosure, that Chloe moved back in with them in a small apartment. I felt distant sympathy, like concern for strangers whose problems were no longer mine to solve. Last month, Leo performed in his school's production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. As I watched him command the stage with confidence and joy, I marveled at the transformation from the frightened, whispering child he had been in my parents' house. After the performance, Leo turned to me with a grin. "Mom, I know I never got to meet Grandma Rose, but I feel like she's been watching out for us this whole time." I wrapped my arm around his shoulders. "She gave us more than money, Leo. She gave us the tools to build the life we wanted, and the knowledge that we deserved better." He nodded thoughtfully. "And she taught us that family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who shows up for you when things get hard." As we drove home, I reflected on our journey. There had been moments of profound loneliness and days when financial stress felt overwhelming. But there had also been small victories, unexpected kindnesses, and the gradual building of a community that supported us. Most importantly, there had been the slow healing of my relationship with myself. For so many years, I had accepted the version of Catherine that my family reflected back to me, the failure, the burden, the daughter who never measured up. Learning to see myself through Leo's eyes, through my grandmother's love, and through my own accomplishments had been like discovering a person I had never known existed. That night, as I tucked Leo into bed, he asked, "Do you ever miss them?" I considered carefully. I miss the idea of them. I miss having a family that I could count on. But I don't miss the way they actually treated us. And I've learned that we can create our own family with people who choose to love us well. They used to say that our laughter ruined their vibe. Now Leo's laughter was the soundtrack to our days. Free and unrestrained and absolutely beautiful. They had tried to convince us that we were lucky to have them, that we should be grateful for their grudging tolerance. But we had learned the difference between charity and love, between tolerance and acceptance, between family by blood and family by choice. And in learning those differences, we had built something they could never take away, a kingdom of Bee and Disgame, our own making, where kindness was the rule and everyone who entered was valued for exactly who they were. In the end, that was my grandmother's greatest gift. Not the money that provided security, but the lesson that we deserved better and the tools to create it ourselves. From the ashes of our old life, we had built something beautiful, something lasting, something worth protecting. And every day, we proved that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve, even from the people who are supposed to love you most.